Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to another Counter-Strike map analysis video. There's a leather club owner over there. Don't look at him. This is Anubis by Roald, Jakuza, and JD40. I know JD40. I don't know the rest of those guys, but they made this map. So we're reviewing it. This is a map where the aesthetic is rather one note, I must say, but they do have chickens. So that's cool. They also have some skybox issues that I'll show off later on as far as clipping is concerned, but generally an open skybox. And what do you say we start ourselves off strong here with some epic trivia that I just found out? If I'm not mistaken, that's a slightly move forward jump throw. And then you can cross mid without getting opt by Kenny S, you know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. Anyway, that's time for the tour, I think, before I get any more excited. So yeah, I'll demonstrate the skybox stuff later on, but let's just go to A. So this is T-spawn, obviously, where my leather club owner is. It's actually quite a large T-spawn rotation. Kind of reminds me of, I guess, sort of like Mirage's T-spawn rotation, where it actually has connections to both bomb sites. But obviously Mirage is a lot more closer, the T-spawn is a lot more closer to A than this particular T-spawn is close to any of the bomb sites. But we'll go through it. That goes to mid, that I just smoked off earlier. And this goes to water, I guess you would call it. And this is like a long upper area that you can rotate to that will keep you safe, but obviously it's like the classic balancing of pathways where you have a safe path that's longer to take and a not so safe path that will offer a quicker rotation. So you see this all the time. Most notably in Inferno, you'll see the Speedway, which is super easy to hear footsteps on and stuff like that. That's like an example of that. But in this particular case, if you decide to go the water route, you could easily get destroyed by somebody holding from mid, because that little area right there is open. So also there's a connector over there to B, which somebody could, in theory, affect rotation. So generally speaking, especially when you're new to this map, you're probably going to be rotating through that upper area if you're trying to go to A in the middle of a round. And especially if you don't have mid control and you don't know if somebody's there. But even if you do know if somebody's in the middle area, and you know that you have control of that, and you know that there's nothing over there, you'll still want to smoke that off, because that little room over there is a connector right into B. So that is a little bit of an interesting mix already, because that kind of crossfire will afford you, well, let's just say, some tools to backstab as the CTs. And of course, you can also lurk there. If you wanted to like come down here and lurk in this particular area while the rest of your team goes A, you could, in theory, pull off some highlight plays reminiscent of Happy. I don't know why French players are the name of the game. This is an Egyptian map, not a French map, but that's okay. So we're coming into A, and I'm not quite 100% sure what the exact gunfights would look like in this particular area. It does feel kind of like it's cramped, but at the same time, it's not. It has that weird issue where you've got a lot of stuff going on visually and a lot of props and maybe a few too many places to hide behind. But I guess I would need to see some actual gunfights here. It's one of those areas where it kind of gives me some pause, because this is the main way for Ts to get into A without having to go through a whole bunch of other potentially CT-controlled areas. So kind of similar to, I guess, Banana. You could make an allegory to Banana. Obviously, it's way less likely to be destroyed by nades every round, but it's kind of crazy to think that you've got to rotate sometimes in this really long situation over there just so that you can come in here and have this singular point of contact be what sort of decides who maintains control of the site. And the bomb site itself is rather large and has kind of a similar, I don't know if you can call it issue, we'll just say characteristic of having a lot going on, as in this room, yet like simultaneously feeling cramped and busy while also being quite open in actuality. So it's probably one of those bomb sites that's just going to take a lot of getting used to, I think. Because obviously when the CTs rotate here, because as we continue on this route, we're going to get back to CT spawn. You can see, what's this guy's name? Bot Punch. Well, react punch emoji to him. And, you know, you got this beach over here, and you come over here into this connector room, you're in A. But, of course, the first thing that greets you is a giant wall. So while you can lob grenades over it and stuff, I'm sure people will find lineups in theory, you know, something like what Overpass has, where there's grenades and Molotov spots for burning people up who are planting. If there's like a perceived default position right there, then that lineup that I just found first try would be super easy to absolutely destroy anybody planting there who's trying to remain safe from anybody holding an angle, you know? So like if I'm holding an angle as a CT here, the bomber's probably right behind that A circle, and so that Molotov would be a useful way to get through to him. But I guess if you have a Molotov in that angle, you could probably throw it yourself. I don't know, just an added layer of security. But because there's the initial wall, whoever does have decided control of the bomb site is probably in an advantage in a retake, just because there's only really a few areas that they can come from, the opposing team. And they have to guess so many different angles in so many different places. This is where mid funnels into a site, but one of the things that you'll notice is that it's also a very long rotation. It's probably the same timing-wise, or about the same, comparable, we'll say, as if you were going from T-spawn to A. If you were going from T-spawn through mid to A instead, you'd probably end up with the same timing, but obviously the A site has less paths for you to take into it if you go the T-side way, while also being safer, in theory, than running through mid and drawing the ire of counter-terrorists everywhere. So, with that being said, just the pathways into this area, I think, are quite interesting. And it definitely makes you think what could be going on here in a firefight or in any other sort of situation. We appear to have a missing texture. It's okay. There's some like art-related issues, graphical issues all over this map in terms of like clipping of props and certain things like that. But as there was a contest involved, I assume that had something to do with it. I assume you should be able to self-boost onto that from here, but I could be wrong. You could certainly boost, like if you could get a teammate or an enemy in this particular case. What is the? Oh, he's stuck. All right, one at a time, gentlemen. Yeah, I don't even need him to uncrouch, as a matter of fact. And I'm up here. So that could be interesting. Definitely reminiscent of a couple of different boost spots in the other bomb sites of the other maps. And yeah. One thing that I do like is that there seems to have been some attention paid to different areas of the map. And this is true for probably all of the submissions that we've gone through so far from the MapCore contest. And it's just one of those things where there's like different props. Like I'm thinking of Broom in Victoria, right? In the Heaven area. If somebody was sitting right there, you could call out Broom in theory. So you could call out like Urn or whatever that is, and or Vase or whatever people would end up calling it, because obviously people call some weird stuff in matchmaking and whatnot. But for callouts like that, he could be Box, he could be Rug. There's like a bunch of different names you could come up with for that. And I think it's interesting and shows that the map makers are thinking of like more than just visually what makes sense and visually what is clear to read, but also a little bit of something to not only spice up the area, but to give it a bit of a flair and give a bit of like readability in a strategic sense as opposed to just in a pure looking at it sense. I think that speaks to an interesting layer of level design that doesn't really get talked up much. But it's one of the reasons why you can call people like spools or coffins or whatever on Inferno. Obviously, spools is from when it was a spool before, and stuff like that. Like car used to be a car there. So yeah, there's all sorts of layers to that, and some people might seem that you just take it for granted when you're given it a lot, and it's nice to see that the developers are conscious of that in this particular case. So more of that would be nice. One thing, though, at the same time, I'm giving it a compliment. I must also give this map a bit of some criticism in terms of the looks department. It feels very samey. Like, yes, there's certain callouts, and yes, there's certain things that are very much unique characteristics. But one of the things that at the risk of angering people who just absolutely can't stand to hear the term League of Legends or the game League of Legends thrown around, while I'm not a fan of the game itself, I must say that they do have an interesting, or I guess accurate, level design thought process. When they were redesigning Summoner's Rift for that game, they went through and made sure that they were making things visually distinct from one quadrant of the map to the other. And that's a map design tenet that I've mirrored in my own Brood War maps as well, and that I would like to see people end up using in general. I think the best maps already use it, subconsciously or not. The best mappers already use that particular method, just because they end up realizing that it makes, if you can instantly look at where you are and know where you are on the map, then odds are that map has a pretty good visual palette. And I feel like, you know, especially when a map has as much custom asset work and detail work put into it as this map does, when so much of it feels very samey, I feel like there's something missing. Like architecturally, yes, things are very different between the bomb sites, as you're about to see when I show you B. But that being said, it still feels a little too samey just immediately visually looking at it. That would be a criticism that I think the developers could... I mean, I don't know what they could do to this particular map to preserve the visual thematics while changing the visuals themselves. Certainly, I'm not the person to ask for a solution in that sense, but definitely a problem that I'm seeing is that the architecture of the map seems different in terms of what shapes you're seeing, but the colors are very, very similar, and that's a problem that is probably rather pervasive, I think. Also, what is up with these chest-high walls? I guess they look aesthetically pleasing or something. But anyway, CT spawn. We're going to head to B pretty soon. Obelisk Square. I think FM Pone actually had a breakdown when he was talking about his, you know, basically there's two kinds of CSGO bomb sites. There's one where the bomb site is surrounding a large object in the center, and then the rest of the bomb site sort of radiates out from that. And then if we quickly charge on back towards A, we'll see the other type is where, like, I mean, this is kind of two of the same, but it was interesting when he gave examples of a couple of different ones and how, like, the other one is mostly looking at bomb sites that are either they have like the one object or they're like radial in nature. So they either have one object in the center or the bomb site itself is the center. And I guess bomb site A is kind of a similar, like a half breed or something. But it's interesting that those two types are kind of like the two. That's the dichotomy of bomb sites that you have. Like you think about Inferno, for example, since we brought that map up a few times already. The bomb site in that particular sense, the B bomb site is surrounding the water sprinkler, and then the A bomb site is more of like the bomb site itself is the central object. So I think it's interesting that there's that duality there, the duality of man and the duality of bomb sites. So this is bomb site B. It has a number of really the biggest issue that I found when I was trying to mess around with this map was the fact that I guess we'll use the smoke grenade to preview that. There's so much clipping inaccuracy in this particular area where so much of the bottom, it bounces off the invisible skybox there, or whatever that is, grenade clipping. Particularly nefarious over in this one, which obviously would be like emergency grenades you're not necessarily going to know lineups for. You just want to throw them over, and they're just going to bounce off and do nothing. So that was pretty frustrating. I spent more time on this map than I did on Victoria, for example, trying to find lineups, and most of the time I just found stuff like that. So definitely something that I would hope to see updated as soon as possible, so that people can actually find lineups for those. So yeah, there's that. This is sort of what I'm talking about, though, when it comes to the visual variety of the map. I mean, this area has a bit more green, so it seems like there was some consideration put into that. And obviously it is outside, so it might make sense to have some more green, whereas inside the A-bomb site, you could have some more stuff like, what's the term? I don't know, just like interior design elements, like the rug and the other doodads and props that you see. But in this particular case, I feel like there wasn't enough done to visually diversify, just like the color palette that you're seeing, even though there is indeed more grass. Although some of the grass seems to be growing despite a lack of shade, or a lack of sunlight. But maybe, it's just a fixed time of day. That's just how that stuff works, But, yeah, there's that. Though it does remind me of something when we go back to the middle area, and I'll show you guys the water area there. There's some lily pads that are seemingly nonsensical. So, I think... wait, what the fuck just happened there? I somehow double jumped. Aha. No, I don't know how I did it. But anyway, there's a pretty considerable amount of approaches to the B-bomb site by comparison to the A-bomb site. Insofar as, even though, like, obviously two of these eventually funnel in, I think most of the gunfights are going to be taken where the T's are going to be coming out from over here. And they're going to have to watch middle, right? So one of them is probably going to go the right side and look here and see if there's anybody trying to get a flank off. And then maybe 2 or 3 Ts are headed towards B, you're going to have at least one guy holding upper, and then, the opper would be down here maybe, or I could in theory even see him holding like a more aggressive peak over here for CTs coming out there. And if CTs do need to evacuate the B-bomb site, they can do it either through the path that we just showed that goes towards T-spawn, or they can come out through here, through these nonsensical lily pads that are growing despite having no access to sunlight whatsoever. And obviously there's the A connection over there. As far as I understand, in order to actually boost up here, you would, unless you can stand on this, yeah, you would almost certainly need like a triple boost or something to get up here, which is interesting. But the fact that it's not out of this question, or out of this world, the fact that it's not out of the question seems to me like there's something that could be done. You could see some really interesting play being done there. And obviously this is towards B and CT spawn, and then this is towards A and mid. And this is mid. We're in mid right now. And then there's lower. I guess we can call this Lily. There's Lily, and then there's, I don't know, wink. There's a winking face. Egyptians have the first emoji, So, what do I think about the B-bomb site? Well, A has that cover system as soon as you walk in, right? So there's some shield from where you want to take gunfights. It's a little bit more open, I guess. This bomb site obviously feels rather open in certain situations, but I also think that you're generally going to solve this conundrum just by playing it and seeing where the gunfights start. If you do want to play back, I do like that the CTs have an option, and they can also poke for map control by looking down here in Wink, or box, I don't know what the fuck you would call it. And if you're in Wink and you're looking down towards lower, that to me seems like an information play that you can make without necessarily abandoning your post at B. And obviously, if mid control is completely corrupted, you got to worry about a wrap through mid into this situation where you'll see some more black textures. And yeah, the other thing though is that maybe some of this stuff could be like opened up in some way, but I'm almost certain that as a result of the way that this thing is in the way, trying to throw grenades in here to get an exec off, if there's CTs on the site and you're coming from this area and they know you're coming from this area, you better hope that your pincer is going to work out well, because if you're all coming this way, it's not going to work out very well at all. Like if there's a mid-round call, you lose 2, it's like a 3-on-3 and there's 2 CTs on site, or one is Wink and the other one is like holding a more aggressive angle over here or something, or just on the site waiting, and he hears you moving around over here. That's a realistic situation, even if it is a rather niche one, and there's no way to throw nades out. So maybe that's fine. Maybe that's the punishment that you have for not being able to maintain somebody in outer B. But I definitely think that there's something that could be done here. I forget some of the lineups that I found over here. I think there's something to do with these pillars. Yeah, so that first one is pretty good for smoking off the B long, I guess you would call this. But the problem is that... Oh, actually, that first one seems to be fine. I was going to say, like, the problem is you can sort of self-boost up here, but I forgot you can't. So that's probably a deliberate consideration being made to prevent oppers holding from this angle. Because I didn't really talk much about the approach from CT side, so I guess I should have been. I was in the middle of talking about, like, color scheme or something. But obviously, you could, in theory, hold, like, a really, really far back angle. Like, there's almost 3 different states of play that you can have as CTs. You can do a super passive angle, which would be, like, one guy opping upper, one guy holding lower. And then that's, like, towards CT spawn so that they can rotate back out through mid or to A or something if the call is made. And then there's, like, a more aggressive post where you can have some guy holding from here. I don't even know what you would call this, but whatever. He's holding in maybe you call this ruins or something, I don't know. Or maybe he's even being like a one and done type angle or something where he's like trying to do this and he would like get the first kill, reposition, or get the first kill and pull back here. Something like that could be useful. Relying on somebody to throw a nade from long, perhaps, where the opera would be. But there's a couple of different spots on the site themselves that they can play if they're trying to not be super passive, but still not trying to be super aggressive. Meanwhile, the timings obviously favor the Ts once you get to this point, but you can, like, there's enough of enough cover, enough places in general where you can sort of do something like this and challenge an opper or even just a couple of riflers or something, especially if you yourself have an op. Like, I'm thinking... There we go. I'm thinking clipping. What the fuck? There we go. I don't know what happened there. But, you know, your timing can still allow you to get over here. And then, obviously, you can just... You know, you can figure something out over there, I think. So, could work. And would definitely be interesting to see, you know... That's like, it's not quite like Overpass, because obviously Overpass is op connection. If you're going to be an aggro opera on Overpass CT side is closer towards middle. Like, it's that map's middle, basically. But I do like that there's room for CTs to play up and to play back on this particular bomb site. Whereas if you're trying to do something similar on the A bomb site, I do feel like, by the way, you can't boost up here. I already tried. I do feel like what ends up happening is like you either have some guy sitting in here in market, I guess you would call this, and you know he's kind of one and done. Like he needs support or something. He needs to be traded maybe. Like maybe you'd have two dudes in here. And the other problem with that is that they're so far away from the bomb site. I feel like the other bomb site that is, and really just the rest of the map in general, that I have a feeling this map would end up being rather T-sided until people figured it out. Just based on the fact that like, you know, you don't have that many tools at your disposal. In terms of what you can actually do as CTs on the A bomb site, right? Like you've got a number of tools on B, like I was just describing, which I like, but I don't think you have a number of tools for holding like A from A itself. I think you would have to, you know, as a matter of fact, I wonder if maybe you'd end up having like one A guy and he'd be playing a defensive position, or maybe he'd like play up for information and fall back immediately as soon as he found something or heard something. And then you would have like 2 mid and 2 B, with one of the Bs playing wink so that he can kill anybody who's actually rotating outward. The problem is I'm pretty sure the timings would favor the Ts on getting to water before somebody gets to wink. So that's what I'm worried about there, is like if you're actually going to be playing that sort of strategy, even then, I think if there's an A rush, it can be super powerful. Thankfully, the mid guys aren't too far away from rotating back, and you could have somebody dedicated, like, he's sort of like cheating towards mid, but he's still an A anchor or something like that. Well, I guess he wouldn't be an anchor in that sense, but he'd be an A player. The backup for the anchor, that could easily work, and then maybe somebody who's also playing middle in general would be like, you'd have 2 to mid. Sort of like Cash, I think this happens a lot, where one guy's like anchoring on the site quad and then on A site, and then somebody else is going to be like playing highway, cheating towards middle, rather than worrying about leaving 2 guys on A dedicated until the anchor mentions something. Meanwhile, B obviously almost always has 2 guys, so I think that could easily make some sense for this particular map as far as like CT rotations and CT defensive alignments or whatever. I think it could work, is what I'm saying, basically. So in that sense, maybe the CTs can hack it in a way that maybe I'm not immediately considering. It's just, for me, it's like, if you're going to be doing it as a terrorist, you know, why wouldn't you just hit the A bomb site over and over again? Considering the lack of tools that the Bs have, or the CTs have, if you wanted to go to B after that, I mean, the rotation isn't that bad. You can make a mid-round call based on the information that you gain. It feels very, very strong for Ts, is what I'm saying. Obviously, depends on many other factors, but... There we go. Just trying to throw that out. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think that already there's a number of options that people have. I'm not super crazy about this middle connector area. Like, I think maybe it would be more beneficial if this lower area was closed off for CTs, and so they either had to play, you know, upper or on site, and then you could give some control of theirs back over towards A, because like obviously there's like a push and a pull that would limit their options towards B, but I think then it doesn't hurt as much, hurt the Ts as much, that is, to increase some of their options towards A maybe. But I don't know, like as far as layout changes go, I don't have any immediate ideas. The main reason why I want to close this up is honestly visuals. Like the rocks look disgusting, but you know, that being said, as far like how does it function in terms of gameplay, like you can still just come back over here. It's just a little bit riskier if you're being pressured, and I think that that's fine. Like that means that you have to, you know your positioning well. And, you know, originally I was going to even consider potentially blocking this up completely, but rather than blocking up one of the routes from CT spawn. But then it reduces the importance of mid control for CTs probably too much, I think. You'd have to give them some other pathway in. And I think right now it favors, obviously, like this particular passageway in, we'll call this Hotep. In Hotep, you have a situation where, like, it favors CTs, but I don't know, man. I'm not 100% sure what the Ts would want to do if a situation like that arose anyway. Like, given the current layout, Ts go down to, you know, just get map control anyway. Like, what would defaults look like? You know what I mean? That's what I try to ask myself when it comes to T rounds. But CTs, it's like, what is the optimal defense? Ts, what is the optimal default? You know, I guess obviously you would want to challenge for mid control, mostly so that you can decide to flood down towards either the bomb sites from the lower area. Like, another one of the things that this map does pretty well, I think, is actually have impact to its Z, because you can flood down here into B, or you can go towards A, and you can do that pivot from mid without engaging directly with the CTs, unless one of them is Wink, or, you know, obviously one of them pushed up water or something from A site. But assuming you have eyes on, you know, you got somebody in position at B to throw grenades through the through these areas. I think I found one that was something like, wow, that's fucked up. But yeah, I think I found something like that that is a deeper smoke. What I need is something that like lands on that little spot there, that little rock, so that they can't you know, find a deeper smoke like that. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely certain things that you could probably do. You get somebody throwing utility from outer B. Maybe two people out there so that one of them can throw utility and the other one can watch for pushes or something. And then if you do have somewhat, you know, some degree of mid control, you can bomb down here real quick, especially if you decide to drop a smoke over here. Because you don't, smoking this side area off is not as important, just because of the fact that you're not really covering, you don't need to cover that angle just to get into Wink, you know what I mean? So like if you're just charging towards Wink and somebody makes the call, hey, I'm being hit, and there's like a rifler, a CT rifler coming up over here. Nice clipping, by the way. You know, you're going to try to catch them over here. That smoke by itself is just going to stop you. I mean, otherwise you could just drop the smoke right here, I suppose. And then good luck trying to hit anybody. You can probably barely see them. You'd be able to see them on the radar, I guess. But I don't think you'd be able to op them. Maybe they're better than me, man. Another thing I think is as far as Ts go, you can't really throw Molotovs in this site. I haven't found any anyway. It'd be something like, I mean, again, because of the skybox clipping issue over there, like you wouldn't actually be able to get anywhere where you could throw a Molotov without actually peeking. So, as a result of that, excuse me, you'd basically have to do something like this if you wanted to clear out the backstack or whatever. Wow, levitating fire. Egyptians know some parlor tricks. But yeah, I don't know, I like Wink. Wink is a cool call-out. But I think the central piece of the map, where clearly, like, I think the most amount of time and thought, well, at least this is what I'm reverse engineering based on playing it and looking at it now and analyzing it. To me, it seems like the best amount, like the most successful experiment here was definitely this area, because you rotate to either site, it's great. And that's a good reward for having control of this. But even if you only have partial control, the other team can still do something. Like if somebody is holding Wink and you drop down, you're risking a firefight there. And it's kind of different. I mean, it's probably not too difficult to smoke this off. Like you could probably just do something like this. Oh, never mind. There's something that blocks that here. What the fuck? Oh, maybe that's more of a bug. I thought that was intentional. But yeah, you can definitely smoke that off relatively easily. And then Wink is completely useless. I mean, he could like jump for information, I guess, maybe. No, not even with that particular lineup. But I don't know how you would redo that one, so. Anyway, it's not going to take much to negate this position with some utility. But in theory, you know, you still have to spend the utility, which is better than not having to spend it at all and getting it all for free. So that's sort of what I'm all about. I like the fact that there's, you know, something there, I guess. And here's a prank for you guys. So if you're getting into this corner, you aim, you see that window over there. Oh, yeah. This corner. aim at the top of that window sill and jump throw, you will get yourselves an excellent prank. Sometimes it falls even lower and the smoke is completely useless. So that's a situation where probably should be fixed. But probably a displacement issue or something. I remember three clicks Philip. Man, I can't say that guy's name ever. I remember he had some problem with... he was like explaining why bomb keeps getting stuck and weapons keep falling through the floor. It's basically that. But yeah, want to fix that whenever you can. In general, I think there's some interesting ideas at play in the bomb sites. Bomb sites themselves feel okay. The A-bomb site, I think I'm more interested in firefights once you're there. B-bomb site, I think there's some interesting things that both teams can do on the approach. But once you get to B... No, once you get to B, I think the firefights could be really interesting too. It's just like post-plant on A seems easy to solve in theory. I'm not sure if that's a bad thing. I mean, you know, there's plenty of things that are in theory solved in Counter-Strike, like Dust 2 B side, for example. Like, you know what's going to be required of you. There's plenty of nades that people can still find to make things more interesting. In fact, I was experimenting with a CT-sided nade at some point. I think it was this, something like that. No, I threw it too far. But basically the idea was that you would throw this nade. There you go. That's it. You would throw this nade and it would fall down and bloom right about here. And when it does, like by the time it does bloom, you can be in position to get a pick and then fall back. So it's kind of like a gimmick, but I think it could be interesting. That's assuming somebody's coming down from here to like, because this is obviously, I didn't really talk about this side passageway, but the reason why this is here, I think, is so that you can take more aggressive peeks if somebody is going to be pushing from A market, I guess. Oh boy, pizza. Why is that sign in the game anyway? So there's that. There's a bunch of things to consider really with post plants. I think my main criticism of the map comes from visuals in here. Visuals all over when it comes to the keeping things consistent and things actually being too consistent in a way, trying to be like super consistent. You know, you definitely know you're in this map at every point, but you don't really know where specifically you are. So some areas of diversification could be nice. Obviously, I only just started playing the map recently in the last week or so. I guess it was probably like 2 weeks ago when I first played it. But even so, I'm still having a difficult time adjusting to where I am, depending on where I am. So, yeah, something to be considered. And then otherwise, just fix those skybox issues and clipping issues. I'm sure there's plenty more that I haven't found yet, but that's those are going to be big impediments to people actually learning smokes and execs onto the site. So, with that being said, I think that's everything. Mostly interested in seeing where this map goes as far as polish. I think its outline is probably fully functional, I would say. It's just certain things about it that I'm not 100% certain of, like if you're going to keep both pathways in from CT side into B site, do you really need this pathway? And like I can definitely see a valuable, value of going from CT to mid through this. I can't necessarily see the same value of going to B site with this. And obviously I understand how it's functional, but I think it might even be better if you kept this whole thing but sealed that door. Then all of a sudden, if you're picking this angle, which is a very strong angle, you can't just back up after the fact if you're flashed or something. There's more of a balancing there. And then obviously that would also encourage more aggressive play or aggressive positioning. Once people, like there's a super easy way to smoke this off that I already forgot, but people are going to find that fairly easily anyway. And so they kind of negate the position regardless. But I don't know. I feel like there's something that on the approach to be from the CT point of view that definitely needs to be tweaked in order for the map to feel a bit more, I guess, balanced when it comes to the firefights themselves. But I think rotation times and stuff like that, that's pretty much good. This is like a weird thing to boost on because I feel like it's a bug that I'm able to do it at all, but that's just because it's kind of inconsistent. Clipping. Lily. All right. Yeah, I think that really does it for me, though. This was a fairly straightforward map in all honesty. And I look forward to seeing where it goes because with the right coat of paint and the fixes to the skybox issues, you could definitely see this map being pretty fun to play strategically while also having enough skill-based angles to take to be entertaining in a different kind of way. So there you go.